Hello, my name is Dan, and you're watching Dan Explains. This is my 13th episode, so I thought the topic of death would be an appropriately gloomy topic. People often think death is a singular event that happens at the end of someone's life. That isn't usually the case. Let me explain why. In my last video, I talked about what constitutes a living organism. As I'm sure you're all aware, except for maybe teenagers, all living organisms eventually become non-living organisms through the process known as death. So, living organisms that go through the process of death are dead, or are they? So what is death? When does it actually happen? In most countries, legal death, also known as clinical death, is when your heart stops beating. So, when you go into cardiac arrest and you get brought back, you've been dead however long that took. If someone can just shock you back to life, clearly you aren't really dead. However, they have to draw the legal line somewhere. After your heart stops beating, the cells in the rest of your body have no clue yet anything has gone wrong until they use up all the oxygen in the immediate vicinity. Then the cell's own metabolisms start to shut down. For some cells that use lots of energy, like neurons, this happens very fast. This is why people lose consciousness quickly after their heart stops. Without a working metabolism, the neurons in your brain will start dying within a few minutes. That's where the death process becomes irreversible. Some cells in your body can hold out for a long time, like muscles for instance. They are capable of anaerobic metabolism, which produces lactic acid instead of using oxygen to make carbon dioxide. Most people should be familiar with this, since intense exercise uses up the oxygen in your muscle faster than it can be put there. So, the muscles switch to anaerobic metabolism. And the lactic acid in your muscles is one of the things that makes you sore the day after you exercise. So anyway, your muscles can often hold out much longer. The cells that can hold out the longest are the ones in the cornea of your eye. This is because you don't even have arteries in that part of your eye. It'd probably be pretty annoying if you did. So, these cells get their oxygen straight from the air. Once those cells run out of energy reserves, that's when they die. I mean, maybe you still aren't dead even then. 100 years ago, you were as good as dead once your heart stopped. Now, people can often be brought back from that if medical help is nearby. This really is why death is a process and not usually an event. So, maybe we'd have some kind of technology in the future that could repair the dead and damaged cells. Then, you wouldn't be dead yet. From a scientific standpoint, I think you're dead once you're so broken, no known method can fix you anymore. So, with modern technology, that's anywhere from 10 minutes to several hours after your heart stops beating, depending on your body temperature. Lots of people have been brought back after an hour if they drowned in freezing cold water. Not mentioning the potential ethical aspects here, there is also life preservation through cryogenics, where they freeze you soon after you're clinically dead and put you in a cylinder full of liquid nitrogen in hopes that someday they can fix you and revive you. Now, technically, The ice really is accelerating the death process to a point, since the freezing process rips open your cells. But like I mentioned before, that may be able to be fixed in the future by some process. Some people have been frozen since the 60s. This is where we come around to the spiritual aspect of this, because when you really die and can't ever be brought back by anything but an act of God, only God knows when that's happened. So, are all these frozen people still alive? Their souls still in their bodies? Or maybe God takes their soul and puts it in limbo. You know, the place also known as Hades in the Bible, where people went when they died before Jesus' sacrifice. People do have near-death experiences, some of which can be explained scientifically, although there are others that still defy explanation, so it could be a hint. Personally, I think God does pluck the person's soul out, but he pushes it into the future and puts it back into your body the next time it becomes functional again. It may seem a bit far-fetched, but consider that something similar to it is possible to do with our physical bodies. Watch my video on time travel for that, link in the description. When would your soul and body separate? Most likely with brain death. If God knows your body will never be revived, he could just take you straight to your particular judgment. So, from a spiritual perspective, you're dead for that time. However, if he leaves it with your body and you're still alive from a spiritual perspective, that opens up some moral concerns, because there are some agreements we enter into that only death can get us out of. You know, death do us part. In Mark 10:9 of the Bible, Jesus says, "Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate." The Catholic Church teaches that marriage is a sacrament that bonds a man and a woman together until the death of at least one of the spouses. This is where things get sticky. Once the spouses are separated by death, the living spouse can get married again. So, if it were the case that you weren't dead from a spiritual perspective, then would it be immoral for the other spouse to get married again? So if the other spouse is dead, that is, no heartbeat, no brain activity, and no hope of restoring either, then the other is free to marry again. Does that mean there's a loophole? If someone died and were cryogenically frozen with no known way to bring them back, then I do think that releases the other spouse from their sacramental marriage. But this still doesn't allow them to cheat the system, since there's that "let no man separate" part in the Bible. If you pre-plan the whole thing, then obviously that would be a man trying to separate. Maybe even murder on top of it. So the gray area between when you're dead or still alive does bring up moral implications. But if your spouse died of natural causes and was cryogenically frozen and you got married to someone else, there isn't an issue, even if 10 or 20 years later the previous spouse is brought back with some kind of new technology. Because in that case, it was God who did the separating. In light of this, I think God does separate your soul from your body when you die, even if he is going to put it back later. If you like this video, please press the like button, subscribe to my channel, and ding the bell to get notified when I make new videos. Also, please support me on Patreon, link in the description. The more people who support me, the more videos I can make like this one. So until next time, have a great week.